So many stories and so many aviators from our region have made significant contributions to aviation, and those stories deserve to be told. Not only are we proud of the work we do, we're proud of the way the aircraft looks. It's been said that they look like they're ready to take off, and that's the point. We want people to walk through, read the stories of the aviators, and especially kids. They dream. They imagine themselves as those pilots, and then we tell them that those pilots were once your age, and they were dreaming as well. We want to ignite that spark. We want to help them to understand that whatever they dream, they can become. And those aircraft do it. They do it quite well.
Well, hello. My name is Dan Cherry, and I'm a Director Emeritus on the Board of Directors at Aviation Heritage Park in Bowling Green, Kentucky. For those of you who may not know, Aviation Heritage Park is an educational facility and a museum that restores and exhibits aviation artifacts to tell the inspirational stories of our local aviators. Today, we're dedicating the latest exhibit at Aviation Heritage Park, Marine One. It's an SH-3 helicopter restored in presidential colors to honor the distinguished career of Bowling Green native, the late Colonel Mac Reynolds. Joining me today is Kathy Reynolds, Colonel Reynolds' widow. And hi, Kathy. It's great to be with you today, and we thank you so much for sharing this special time with us.
Well, I want to thank you. I mean, to have this opportunity to talk about Mac and his career in the Marine Corps for this dedication is a real honor for me and for our family. We are so appreciative of Aviation Heritage Park and what you've done from start to finish to get this helicopter restored. I don't think I ever imagined that this would happen, but Mac loved Bowling Green, so it just is so fitting that he's going to be a part of the history of Bowling Green there at the park forever. So I'm very appreciative.
And it's our honor to be able to do it. You know, and when we first started Aviation Heritage Park back in 2005 and 2006, we always had our radar out there on Mac's career, and it makes us feel really good to bring that to fruition here today too. So tell us about that. When the two of you first met, I assume you were college students when that happened, but do you remember the specific day, the first time you ever laid eyes on him? What attracted you to him?
Well, Mac Reynolds, the clean-cut looking Marine, had hair down to his shoulders when I met him. Jet black hair, which he didn't have much after the Marine Corps, where you could even tell that it was black. But he was, I think what drew me to Mac was he was such a free spirit in that he wasn't a hippie. I mean, we were in college in the 60s and late 60s and early 70s, but he just had this desire to go see the world, to do things. And I had such a sheltered life in Somerset that he was just fascinating to me. When people say opposites attract, we kind of did, but we complimented each other always.
Had he already developed an interest in the military or in aviation somehow by that point of his life?
I finished school a semester before him and was already working on a career that I really liked. And he came home one day and he had a meeting with a Navy recruiter, and which, you know, I had to sit down at that point because I was a little surprised. And he just said, "What do you think? I really want to fly. I really want to fly." But he actually was recruited by the Navy, and it was when Vietnam was winding down. And they said, and I hope all his Marine Corps friends don't shoot me for telling this, they had a surplus of pilots at the time, and he was going to have to wait about 6 to 9 months to go into flight, you know, into the Navy. And they said, but the Marines are looking for pilots right now. And he said, sign me up. So he became a Marine.
I see. Were you together when he went to Pensacola to take his flying training?
Yes.
So what are your memories of that? I remember personally, when I went through pilot training, it's very stressful, but also so much fun. And, you know, you're in a situation with like-minded people. The spouses are too, and that you create memories, I think, that last a lifetime. But tell us a bit about those days at Pensacola.
I'm sure you remember, you study so hard, all the flight paths, everything you have to know. And we used to sit in the living room of a little tiny duplex, and he would do the runways with toilet paper. And I would sit with the book, and he would tell me, was he supposed to turn right? I had to follow the book. And we used to joke afterwards that I could have passed the flight training too, because I had done it all with him at home, We had one daughter in Pensacola, and then when we had our second daughter, we spent most of our time on the East Coast and West Coast. Marine aviators are generally on the coast if they're helicopter pilots because of the amphibious. Our second daughter was born in North Carolina. But our kids got raised with seeing a lot of the world, and that just benefits them so much. So we never saw the moving around as a negative with the kids. They might, if they were on here, they might be able to tell you some things they didn't like about it. But
well, Max certainly had a distinguished career, and I know your whole family is so proud of all of his accomplishments. And it must have been a great honor for him to be selected for HMX-1, the squadron that provides the helicopter transportation for the president. Can you share with us your memories of how that came about? How did Mac get selected for that assignment, and what are some of the memories you have of those days?
Well, my first memories are when he was there for the first tour. That was just an amazing tour. I didn't know that the Marine Corps even did that, had that mission. And so we spent 5 years the first time. We lived in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And, he was a pilot and the White House liaison officer. And so there were experiences that we had that were wonderful there. He just came home one day and said, we're going to go to Quantico and I'm going to be in the President's Squadron. But that one was just an awakening for me to live near Washington and see everything. When Mac did fly there, he was able to take them up to, watch the helicopter land. And they went to a Christmas party with him, all dressed up one time. And they got to see Washington in a different way than just on the news. For him to go back in command, we were over in Stuttgart, Germany. We lived some wonderful places, and he was the chief of current operations there at Stuttgart. I'm not exactly sure his title, but it was a big job. He used to say he wanted to come back as a spouse instead of the Marine, because I had a great time and he worked all the time. But yeah. The Marine does command lists. So you have to be selected for a command list before you're actually given a command. And it's a selective process. And every promotion Matt got, he would tell me, I'm not going to get promoted this time, but we've had a good ride and we'll go back to Kentucky. At one point, he applied to law school. Sure, he wasn't going to get into, make the next rank, and he did. And so we stayed. He never could give up that camaraderie. I was pulling for law school and thinking, I could be back in Kentucky and go to UK games. But for the command at HMX, he made the command list, and we weren't sure if you can make the command list and not get a command. Sometimes it just that's needed for the next promotion, but you don't always get that command that you wanted. And he really thought that he had never had a Pentagon tour, and that was where we would go from Germany. And lo and behold, he got HMX. Who's up for it because there are restrictions or requirements. You have to have been in the squadron before, like he was at an earlier age in his earlier time in his career. He didn't really expect it, and he was just overjoyed when he got it.
I'll bet he was. It's just such a great honor. So when he accepted that assignment, had he already been promoted to full colonel?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I think that and one squadron out in Yuma are the only squadrons in the Marine Corps that are commanded by full colonels. There aren't many colonels that still fly. You're
right.
You're in other positions. So It was, I used to always say, you aren't really working. I'm working. You're not really working. But he was. I knew that.
Yeah,
I saw the stress,
certainly.
and
Yeah.
I saw that phone that sat next to our bed that Mac was a very heavy sleeper. And when that White House phone went off, or the one from the White House mail office, it was always me that woke him up to get it, because I was a light sleeper. So I knew the stress involved with the job, but it was also a joy for him.
Yeah. Now, I know you've seen pictures of the restored SH-3 at the Aviation Heritage Park. At some point in time when Mac had these assignments, had you been able to go on board the presidential helicopter and actually see what it looks like inside?
Oh, goodness, yes. I mean, the experiences we had were amazing at HMX. To reward those spouses for all they went through, we often got to take them to stand on the lawn and watch the helicopter land and then see the helicopter. We got to do things that I just never imagined. And I think I've said that to you before, but I went to the White House for a buffet dinner at Christmas. I never thought growing up that would be something I would do. Mac had to fly, was with Clinton at Camp David for Thanksgiving, and the Clintons didn't want him to be without his family, so the girls and I got to go have Thanksgiving dinner at Camp David. Little things like that are just etched in my memory that I'll never forget. And said, here we are, two little, no offense to Kentucky, but we said, here we are, two little hicks from Kentucky. Look what we've done. And we always were grateful for that. Always grateful for the military. My father eventually came around and was glad that Mac went to the military.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. So, during your White House years, I'm sure you had the opportunity to meet the presidents that Mac flew for, and the first ladies. Tell us a little bit about that.
I met the Bushes the first time when Mac landed them on the lawn for the first time, and that he was CO. And I think the military aide on the helicopter said to President Bush, the colonel's wife is on the lawn. And he said, oh, which one is she? And Max said, well, she's got on a red dress. And as they walked over, he was pointing at me and Laura was pointing at me. And I'm pointing at the helicopter. I think that my mind went, yeah, I'm really supposed to be here. That's my husband. I just kind of panicked. And they came over and talked. They had their little dog. And months later, we were at a Marine silent drill team event at 8th and I. If you've ever had an opportunity to go there, it's just wonderful. And the president was the guest of honor. And we were at a garden party at the commandant's home before the party. And I'm standing with Mac, and the president walked up and he looked at me and said, orange dress. And without even thinking, I said, no, sir, it was red. And Mac, when we got home, said, Kathy Reynolds, you are the only person that would just correct the president. Why did you do that? So then when he retired, we got, the president did a little ceremony in the White House and in the Oval Office. And when we walked in, President Bush laughed and said, pink dress. And then we just all laughed. I just appreciate it so much because, Dan, there are hundreds of people that are in support of, that's probably a wrong exaggeration. A minimal amount. I'm saying all the people that are in support of the president, that he had that kind of sense of humor and remembered to say that to me. I just love. And this is coming from a Democrat, talking about Bush. He had just an endearing personality and treated us all very nicely.
Oh, that's great. Well, those are some wonderful days, I know, for you, and it makes all of us proud when we hear these stories, Kathy. Even more so than we have been in the past of Mac. But now we're knowing you a little bit better, and we're equally proud of you and your family and how what a big part you played in that distinguished career.
I'm going to try to do this without being emotional, but we got to see a different side of Mac in North Carolina. He had always been he was a wonderful father, a great husband. He was never domestic. We were one of those old marriages, and so we knew he had that soft side. but it just wasn't on display as much while he was the Marine. He had a poster that the girls gave him that was over his desk. It was a big eagle that said, "I am smiling," because he was just so serious. But what I wanted to say about him is that after we got to North Carolina, had both retired, I came down with this ultra rare blood disease. Yeah. And Dan, I was in the hospital for weeks and weeks and shouldn't be here right now. Thank goodness that we were in North Carolina. I had absolutely the most unbelievable doctors at Duke that still had me under their care. And I had to have a transplant. I had the transplant and Mac died 6 months later, but I wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for Mac, the man that had never done anything domestic. See, I was hoping I would do this without crying.
That's okay. That's all right.
Just took over our home and our house. Our family and everything. And he cooked, he washed, he taught me to walk again because I literally couldn't even walk. And he was the most gentle caregiver. And I'm just so sad because I'm so much stronger now than when he died, that I wish he had gotten to see what he did. And I want him to be remembered as a great Marine and a good, loyal friend and a wonderful father. But he was just a good man, Dan. Yeah. So I'm so appreciative that y'all are honoring him at the aviation. And I'm sorry, I've tried to be light in the whole thing. I'm sorry I got emotional at this one point.
Kathy, you've just done wonderfully well with all of this. And what a great way, I think, for us to kind of conclude this little interview, because you've shown your side that is so important in this whole thing. One final thought. We're all here, today to basically dedicate the new exhibit that's going to honor Mac's career and honor your service too, for that matter. So what do you think Mac would say if he could walk out on Aviation Heritage Park and see that helicopter restored in presidential colors?
He wasn't a braggadocious person, so he'd be a little embarrassed, Dan, but not. He would be so proud. He would be so appreciative of all the efforts. Probably sad that he wasn't involved in the restoration with y'all laughing and having a beer and doing the whole thing. I think more than anything, he would be hopeful that little kids and older kids that go to the park can aspire to do those things. That he didn't have the financial means to be a pilot without going to the military, but look what it gave him in life. And so, I think he would be very hopeful that it inspires other people to go after their dreams.
Well, that's a wonderful and fitting thought for us thinking as Aviation Heritage Park goes forward. We'll certainly use Mac's example as a way to continue the success stories that will continue to be told out there.
Hello everyone, I'm Steve Taylor, and I'm honored to be able to talk to you for a few minutes about my good friend Mac Reynolds. I had the privilege of assuming command of HMX-1 from Mac in 2001. That tour for me, and I think Mac would agree, was the highlight of our Marine Corps careers. I'd like to express my appreciation to the Aviation Heritage Park for preparing this wonderful tribute to Mac. Restoration of an aircraft is truly a labor of love. It becomes one challenge after another to restore and preserve the aircraft. But more so, it's a tribute to the men and women who maintained and operated those aircraft. In the case of the SH-3 restoration, I know Mac would be very proud and thankful to the many individuals and thousands of hours of labor that went into making this aircraft a faithful representation of the VH-3 that Mac and many of us have flown, maintained, guarded, and supported over the years. Thank you, Aviation Heritage Park, for the honor you've bestowed on Colonel Mac Reynolds. As I mentioned, I had the wonderful opportunity to receive the flag and assume command of HMX-1 from Mac in June 2001, but our friendship began many years before that. I first met Mac when we were serving together at MCAS New River in the late 70s. Mac was in a CH-46 squadron and I was in a CH-53 squadron, but our paths soon crossed and Mac and I became friends early on. Later, Mac and I served our first tours at HMX-1 together. Mac was a White House liaison officer, which kept him constantly on the road as we supported President Reagan throughout the country and the world. It was great to maintain the connection with Mac and Kathy that we had started at New River. With that as a backdrop, in 2000, I was very excited to be selected to command HMX-1, and even more so because I would come to the squadron a year prior to change of command to refresh and get to know the squadron's operation. Mac and Kathy opened their arms to Suzette and me, and we had a wonderful year together as Mac finished his command tour and I prepared for mine. I will always be appreciative of the time Mac spent with me to be sure that was a smooth transition. One of the many things that I'll always remember about Mac was his love for Kathy and his daughters, Christina and Sarah. Since Mac's untimely passing, Suzette and I have maintained Kathy, Christina, and Sarah in our hearts. Commemoration of this wonderful tribute to Mac reminds us of the man, the husband, the father, and the Marine that Mac was, and that his spirit will never be forgotten. Thank you to all who have made this possible, and Semper Fidelis, Colonel Mac Reynolds.
My name is Matt Cairns, and I served at HMX-1 from 1999 to 2001 as a Marine One security guard. During that time, Colonel Reynolds was my first commanding officer. We were privileged to be able to fly the President at different locations across the country and around the world. Colonel Reynolds was a good leader, a great Marine, and a compassionate man. One time at Camp David, as I was getting ready to do a drop for the President, I heard news of a family emergency. Colonel Reynolds authorized another white top helicopter to come pick me up from Camp David and fly me back to Quantico. It is great to be part of presidential history and Marine One, the most recognizable helicopter in history. It is an honor and a privilege to serve with Colonel Reynolds. I'm proud that they're honoring him at Aviation Heritage Park, and Bowling Green, Kentucky should be proud of their Colonel Reynolds.
So many stories and so many aviators from our region have made significant contributions to aviation, and those stories deserve to be told. That not only did they have General Cherry, who was former commander of the Thunderbirds, they had a former commander of the Blue Angels, a space shuttle pilot, the man who led the raid on Muammar Gaddafi, a 4-star general in charge of the Strategic Air Command, Vietnam War hero, the first black female to hold a pilot's license in the United States, and of course, a presidential pilot. Mac's career was fantastic. He was in the Marine Corps for 27 years, and during that time, he became a Marine Corps helicopter pilot just after he graduated from the University of Kentucky. Born and bred, raised and taught here in Bowling Green. His father was a superintendent of schools. His mother was a registered nurse. He understood what service was when he was as a young child. So when he became a Marine Corps aviator, got his wings of gold, he started a very long career, a very beneficial career. He was always successful in whatever he was doing.
You know, the mission of the park is to make sure that we keep the history of local aviators alive, and it is something that keeps me very active within the community, and the excitement of pursuing new artifacts for the park. I think back to when I first came on the board in 2009, there was discussion all the way back at that time about trying to find an SH-3 that could be restored to Marine One, because Colonel Mac Reynolds needed to be recognized. He needed to be honored at the park. 2 years ago in November of 2018, through one of our board members having contact with an individual at the National Naval Air Museum in Pensacola, there was a thought that maybe there were going to be some SH-3s coming available.
When we got word that we could take possession of the helicopter, we put together 4 members of the AHP board, and we drove down to Jacksonville.
We go to wherever the artifact is and inspect it. In the case of the SH-3, when we found her in Jacksonville, Naval Air Station Jacksonville, she had been sitting derelict in the back of the Naval Air Station there for many years. Paint faded, gray, hydraulic leaks, just a mess. But she was all there.
Looked over the helicopter. The following day, a couple of guys from Clayton International came down and joined us, and they brought some more equipment and stuff like that. And we spent the next 2 days disassembling the helicopter on the ramp at Jacksonville Naval Air Station. The truck from Clayton came down. We actually rented a heavy lift wrecker to pick it up and put it on the truck. Once we had it sitting on the truck, we had to take the sponson off. The sponsons, that's the things that the wheels are in. We had to take those off because it was simply too wide to go down the road. But this truck was such that it was so close to the ground, and I'm talking like this high off the ground, that he could haul it up here without having to disassemble the helicopter. So that helped us a lot.
It's not what we expected the outcome of that trip to be, but to come back to Bowling Green and be able to share with everyone that we had the opportunity to get an SH-3.
Got it in on, I guess it was a Saturday afternoon just before a huge storm came up.
It always seems that our recovered aircraft come to Bowling Green either in the rain or the snow. It's pretty amazing, but they show up and then the rebuilding process begins.
The restoration committee that takes these aircraft as we receive them, sometimes in terrible condition, they bring them back to life.
Gray, just as gray as a cloud. And it had numbers and nomenclature on it.
This particular aircraft that the Navy allowed us to have and to allowed us to put into the Marine One colors was actually an SH-3H model. It was used in anti-submarine warfare for a number of years. So it actually had, when we got it, it had a console in the back with a lot of electronic equipment and stuff, and operator stations and buoys that would go down into the water and listen for submarines. And it had the capability to have 4 torpedoes on the side, so it could actually hunt submarines.
But that's not what we were looking for. We wanted to honor Colonel Mac Reynolds, a presidential pilot. And the presidential pilots fly Marine One.
Well, the Air Force One obviously is if the president's going to take a long trip someplace. If he's going to go to Dallas or Los Angeles or Nairobi, Kenya, wherever he ends up, or someplace in Europe, he's going to take Air Force One. And it's always called Air Force One if the president's on board. But then you've got Marine One, and what Marine One does, it's a short haul vehicle that allows him to go from the White House to Andrews to catch Air Force One, or from the White House to Camp David, or from the White House to some other local place. And so it's almost the equivalent of Air Force One, except it's a short haul version that gets him from in and out of tight places.
The SH-3 was stripped down to bare metal, just as all the aircraft when we get them and start restoration. That's the first step, is to take them down to bare metal.
Entire aircraft was sandblasted, made ready for paint. We moved the aircraft out to Aviation Heritage Park from the airport, and then dropped the restoration tent down over it.
They usually use a dry ice type spray to strip the paint off, and they come to us and say, okay, here's the colors that we're going to try to paint this with. So then I go and look at the dimensions of the airplane and determine how many gallons of each color we're going to need to be able to do, the coating on there. And then they'll give me the color numbers again, and I'll have our facility out in Mojave, California, make all the paint. With the Sea King, the helicopter that we just finished, I think it came out just beautiful. Just it's going to be one of the stars of the museum, down to the actual pinstriping that they put on there. We spent a day, and I was actually there, helped them lay the stripes out. And we peeled them off 2 or 3 times to make sure they were exact what the drawings were that we had and the pictures. So anybody that comes to that museum, if they had ever seen that helicopter fly in real life, it would be an exact replica of what they were seeing. When you're able to work on next to, Tanker and Rooster, Colonel Franklin, and all the guys, to hear the stories. So it's pretty special that they're being able to preserve so other people can see that when they come to the museum and learn about the history of the Kentucky aviators that flew those airplanes.
About a year ago, we walked it from the airport out to Aviation Heritage Park to begin the restoration process. And a year later, we have this beautiful replica of Marine One to honor Colonel Mac Reynolds. His story is pretty amazing. To have had the opportunity to be the pilot for 3 presidents, and then a vice president who later became president. Pretty unique for one individual to have had that opportunity. And I think it says a lot about him that not once but twice he was asked to command that operation.
And under his command, HMX-1 did all the operation and evaluation of the MV-22 Osprey, the tilt rotor aircraft. And under his command, they provided the entire evaluation for the Marine Corps for that aircraft, which is now in combat service. So Mac wasn't just flying presidents. He was bringing the next generation of aircraft to the Marine Corps.
It's our understanding that this makes the 4th replica Marine One to be on display in the country. One being at the Reagan Library in California. One that we had a chance to see when we went to Pensacola in November of 2018. That's on display there at the museum in Pensacola, the Navy Museum. And then one at the Marine headquarters in Quantico, Virginia. That those are they were the only 3. Ours now makes the 4th replica of Marine One to be on display to the public.
I'm Colonel Fred Geyer, and I will tell you of one particular trip that Mac and I did during the Reagan years. We would rarely travel to the same location because we were doing the same job but on different trip sites. Well, Mac said he really wanted to do the trip in Bowling Green, and he said it was going to be spread out and he needed someone to go with him. So I decided to schedule both Mac and I on the same trip to Bowling Green, and President Reagan went down there to visit Mammoth Cave. So Mac said, "No problem, stick with me, Fred. I know Bowling Green like the back of my hand," and we went and had a tremendous trip. I remember Mac was in Mammoth Cave and we were looking for a place to land, and Mac says, "We want to land the helicopter here, but these trees are in the way. We need to at least remove 1 or 2 of these trees." So hesitantly, the head ranger in charge of Mammoth Cave says, "No problem, we'll take that tree out." So they took one of the trees out, and Mac says, "Geez, I didn't think he was going to cut down the tree," but it made for a great landing zone. So we had a good time. I met a lot of Mac's lifelong friends, Tommy Loving. I will never forget Ranger Strange from Mammoth Cave. He told me during the trip, he says, "If you ever come back to Bowling Green, let me know and I'll give you a VIP trip." Well, the trip came and went. We had a great time. Several years later, I went back to Bowling Green, went to Mammoth Cave, and I asked for Ranger Strange, and of course he said he'd retired. So I told him that Mac and I were there, and the ranger that was listening to me just looked like she didn't believe it one way or the other. And I said, yeah, we took a lot of pictures during this trip, and I know we gave a lot to Ranger Strange. So she took us into a back room there, and here's all the pictures from that presidential trip that were up there on the wall. And then all of a sudden she believed us, and she says, oh, you were here for that presidential trip. So she proceeded to give me and my family the best trip of Mammoth Cave, best tour of Mammoth Cave you ever saw. We went on the boats, we went hiking, we went through every caverns that weren't open to the public, and we went everywhere. And she promised, she says, if you ever come back here, let us know, we'll take good care of you. So I must admit that Bowling Green is a very friendly community, and they go out of their way to take care of good people. So until I return, I'll always remember that trip that Mac and I took to Bowling Green.
My name is Bruce Reynolds, a retired Master Gunnery Sergeant who served under Col Arthur Mac Reynolds from 1999 through early 2000 at Marine Helicopter Squadron 1 at Marine Corps Air Station, Quantico, Virginia. As this was the last full year of my military career, the time there stands out to me and the memories are indeed precious. I served as his avionics chief and senior trip leader, also as his acting aircraft maintenance chief and sergeant major when called upon. Therefore, I consider my experience with Colonel Reynolds to be broad, even though I only served with him for 1 full year. Colonel Reynolds was a Marine's Marine, and this was conveyed in every aspect of his character. He was direct and clear when he was conveying his commander's intent, and also listened thoughtfully to those he led. This was particularly evident in a situation that we were both engaged in concerning a Marine under his command. Colonel Reynolds listened intently to every point of view and then considered each carefully before making his decision. He then put forth a plan of action to rectify the situation and achieve the best possible outcome. This was done quickly and took into consideration the privacy of all those concerned. When we deployed in support of the President of the United States, Colonel Reynolds endeared himself to his staff non-commissioned officers by giving a comprehensive briefing concerning all aspects of the upcoming mission. And then he let us do our jobs. The trust he displayed and our professional abilities was returned in the respect that the staff NCOs held for him. Colonel Reynolds was approachable, and we always felt that he had our backs. It was with great sadness that I learned of his passing. However, I did get to see him and chat with him during a recent change of command at HMX-1. On reflection, Colonel Reynolds stands out among the many stellar Marines I had the distinct honor and pleasure to serve beside. Semper Fi, and God bless Colonel Reynolds.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. What a big day it is for all of us and for all of you. I'm Larry Bailey, your Master of Ceremonies today. We have a wonderful program for you. We start our program today with the Kentucky wing of the Civil Air Patrol presenting the colors, and then Kevin Briley will play our national anthem, and then please remain standing while we retire the colors. Please stand. please, with me, thank Kevin Briley for a beautiful version of our national anthem. And a special thanks to the Kentucky wing of the Civil Air Patrol Color Guard. Some of these young men came from Paducah, far away, and they're going to head out before the storm comes in. It's a pretty emotional day for most of Aviation Heritage Park board members, and I call it our, you all may take your seats. I like the way you stand in front of me, and as soon as it starts raining, you can run. The emotion today is a big one, and my remarks are very brief. Sometimes in our hangar parties, we bring a bit of lightness to the air, but everything today is very serious. September 2nd, World War II was officially over this month. 9/11 yesterday, we all know what that meant to our hearts. And here we are today, honoring one of our own, a brother of ours on Aviation Heritage Park's board, with this wonderful dedication of Marine One. Could not have come out better. And when I look at this, and I know our president, Joe, I'm going to steal some of his thunder a little bit, but he knows that I do that. When we started the idea in 2004, and then in 2005, and where we are today, when you stand here and just look at this, there were some doubting Thomases, I have to admit, that said you're going to put one airplane in a park and every pad is filled. And that's what this organization is all about. When you finish one, you have one in the hangar that you're continuing to move forward with. And we've done that since day one with the F4, and then with Johnny Magda's F9, and then the T-33 for General Doherty, and then the F-111 for Arnie Rooster, and Terry Wilcott with the T-38, and then the Huey, and now the Marine One, and all the pads are filled. I have to tell you, the first plan for this park was, let's just pour concrete for a pad for General Dan Cherry's plane. But that really wasn't enough. Let's go ahead and build it out, and we'll fill all the slots, and they're all filled. There's a list of other aviators, heroes, pioneers of aviation that we continue to compile. And it's not about these planes. It's about the men and women who flew them. It's their stories. I think we're the most unique aviation park in America, because we're not just a park with a bunch of planes in it. We are a park about the men and women that flew them. And when you read these stories, had it not been for Aviation Heritage Park, many of these stories would have melted away. So our mission to preserve, memorialize, and honor our heroes from South Central Kentucky and Western Kentucky University, and to see it all come together today, I think the entire Aviation Heritage Park family, not just the board, because it's a family of volunteers that come and help. And we'll need your help to keep going. We have other artifacts. You're going to be surprised at what's in the plans to continue to build this park. And it's going to take this hangar museum. I can almost vision seeing that right now in that spot. We're well underway. So it's not, will it happen? Not build it and the people will come. We're already underway. So with that, join with me in our pride that we have today. Thank you for being here. And it is an unusual event for Aviation Heritage Park to do this virtually because of the COVID pandemic. So for all of you that have joined us from, frankly, around the world, we've had people that have said that they can't wait and they want to be here, and we thank you for being here. A very short list of people I want to recognize and thank, because there are so many people that have contributed and done so much, both in kind and through financial support. But when we look at this helicopter, there's one person in Pensacola, Florida, that helped us through this and the pieces to make it happen. And I know you're watching, Lenore. So Lenore Taylor, thank you very much at the Navy Museum, and a round of applause for Lenore. A lot of other people that we could go through a long list, and I won't do that. But I will tell you this, that our family extends to the Warren County Parks and Recreation. This is Basil Griffin Park on Three Springs Road. This is Aviation Heritage Park. And Chris Coomer and his team talk about taking care of us. Look at how well manicured everything is. And they mowed twice this week, and they sprayed for mosquitoes, and they did it again this morning, but they are committed to make this a first-class venue. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the premier aviation event in the state of Kentucky. And when this museum gets built, and you're going to be part of it, well, wait till you come back and see what's on our roll to happen. Right now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce a man who's been our leader. It seems like for 10 years, but he snaps a pretty good whip for 2 years. Joe Tenius is our president. Talk about a leader. Anytime that there's an obstacle, he finds a way to circumnavigate that. And anytime that there may be some disagreement between some of our volunteers and our board members, he finds a way to mend that. So Joe, thank you for that, and please welcome Joe Tenius.
Thank you, Larry. What a very special day in the relatively short history of Aviation Heritage Park, and for the late Marine Colonel Mac Reynolds. Since joining the AHP board in 2009 as a director, I've listened to and been part of many conversations and efforts to locate a Sikorsky SH-3H to appropriately tell the story of Colonel Reynolds. After following many leads over many years that did not materialize, today we stand here with a replica of Marine One to honor Colonel Reynolds. Persistence, perseverance, commitment, dedication, that describes the members of the AHP Board of Directors. At this time, I'd like to ask all AHP directors and directors emeritus to please stand to be recognized. Directors, please stand, give us a wave. And thank you for allowing me to be a small part of this outstanding organization. The AHP Restoration Committee, led by Gerald Tanker Roark, has hit a grand slam out of the park with this project. I encourage you to take a look at the two display boards on the other side of Marine One to fully appreciate the transformation that has taken place. Now, Tanker will be quick to say that he is only one person, and it takes the entire group to make something like this happen. With that said, will every volunteer that has sanded, scraped, repaired, patched, primed, painted, striped, cleaned this beautiful helicopter please stand to be recognized? Everyone from the Restoration Committee, all the volunteers, please stand. Tell you what, our restoration team is second to none. And I repeat, volunteers. But Tanker, every great team has a great leader, and that's you. Where are you, Tanker? There you are. Please come forward and accept from Air Boss a token of our appreciation and a memory from this day. I have in my hand Tanker's favorite beverage. This is a bottle of Woodford Reserve, and it is in fact a Kentucky Derby 2020 memorial bottle. No, not yet. And this is a genuine HMX1 challenge coin to be given to Tanker in the appropriate manner. Thank you, Tanker. This project has been supported by individuals and businesses from our community and other states in a variety of ways. Our special thanks on this project to Continental Machinery Movers, Phelps Towing, Sikorsky Aircraft, Green River Rentals, Hobby Dye and Reed, Western Crane, Triple Oaks Farm, Clayton International, Wimpy Welding, Southern Kentucky Media Blasting, Signs Express, Skyviews by Jason, and a special thank you to Ward LaPaglia and PPG Aerospace Coatings for once again supplying the paint for this project. Thank you, Ward. Bob Airboss Pitchford had no idea when he was asked about a year ago if he would agree to chair the 2020 Hangar Party Committee what was waiting for him. I lost count a few months ago which plan we are on now, because we started with plan A for hangar party in June, and then we went to Plan B, and then we went to Plan C and D, and I'm not sure where we are today, probably F or G. But Air Boss, with the assistance of our always steady and adaptable Executive Assistant Christine Bobko, you've pulled it off, Air Boss. Thank you very much. Every significant and effective organization has a strong board of directors, but just as important are those individuals who are not on the board, but work behind the scenes to make things happen. One such individual is Cara Beth Pitchford, who has never been a director, but without her work in the area of technology, AHP would not have the reach that we enjoy today. From website design and management to all things social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, today's virtual production, she has been the face behind the curtain. Cara Beth, while not expressed often enough, on behalf of the AHP Board of Directors, thank you for what you have done for AHP and the critical role you have played in our growth and recognition over the years. Thank you, Cara Beth. Larry Laserbeam, thank you for developing, nurturing, and maintaining a relationship with Rick Hahn at the National Naval Aviation Museum in Pensacola. Without your regular visits to the museum and conversations with Rick over many years, this day perhaps does not happen. Thank you, Laser. Kathy, while we wish you could be here at the park with us today, we know you're watching and you're with us in spirit. And we certainly wish this day had come sooner so Matt could have been here with us as well. Please know how much we appreciate your support over the past 2 years regarding this project. We're pleased to have with us today at Kathy's request, Mike McGee from Villa Hills, Kentucky, to share thoughts and comments about his association with Colonel Reynolds. Mike joined GE Aviation in the mid-2011 and currently works as a senior business development and program manager with the new and derivative products. Wasn't sure I'd get that right. Prior to his current position, Mike was the account manager for GE's aeroderivative gas turbines for the U.S. Navy, the Americas, and the Indian Navy. A lot of GE products in all of these aircraft. Prior to joining GE, Mike was a member of the United States Marine Corps, most recently as the Deputy Program Manager, Presidential Helicopter Replacement Program, Patuxent River, Maryland. Before that assignment, Mike was the USMC Deputy Program Manager, in-service presidential helicopters, overseeing various functions for the in-service presidential helicopters fleet. Mike spent the majority of his USMC career as a pilot, serving in multiple squadrons, including 4 overseas deployments. Over the course of his career, he qualified in 6 different aircraft models and earned designations as an Air Mission Commander, Weapons and Tactics Instructor, Presidential Command Pilot, and Airline Transport Pilot, accumulating over 3,400 mishap-free flight hours. Mike worked with Mac, and we are so pleased that Mike is here today to share with us some thoughts about Mac. Mike?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I was going to wear my flight jacket, but I'm afraid I might pass out, even with the reprieve from the sun. So I did bring the patch that Mac and I shared. I'll bring it up here. I'm afraid it might blow off, or I'd put it over there. I'll hold it for you. That is the patch from Marine Helicopter Squadron 1, or HMX-1. So about 17 years ago, my hair wasn't quite as gray. I was probably 30 pounds lighter, and I had the privilege of being a maintenance officer with Marine Helicopter Squadron, or HMH 362, big heavy lift helicopter squadron. I was the maintenance officer. We were deployed deployed in Japan and generally over Asia, but we were short on everything from toilet paper to rotor blades. So we just couldn't get enough of the stuff. And one that sticks in my mind, it wasn't the biggest problem we had, but for whatever reason it's logged up here, is we couldn't get the visors that go on your helmet. Again, not a big deal, but there are kind of two kinds of visors most of you guys have probably seen. There's the smoked one that acts like sunglasses, and everybody wore those. We all had them. Because we were wearing them and using them all the time, they'd eventually get scratched up, so you need to replace them every year or so, and we didn't have any to do that. There's also another type of visor called a clear visor, basically. We were supposed to wear those when the sun wasn't around, but we didn't because they were a pain in the rear. So we never did, and basically those things were useless. So we'd had these visors on order for about 3 months. We kept ordering month after month, and the requisition kept getting denied and denied. And one day in Japan, my staff sergeant who was running my flight equipment shop came in and said, "Sir, they finally approved our requisition for visors." I said, "Great." And about 2 weeks later, the same staff sergeant comes in. "I don't think we're going to make it." How do we want to do this? Just press on? Or?
I think we press on.
Same staff sergeant comes back and he says, "Sir, you need to see something." So I follow him to flight equipment. He points at a box, and I open up the box, and sure enough, there must have been 70 to 100 visors in there, brand new. Every one of them was the clear, useless variety. You probably saw that coming. And it came with a note, and it said something to the effect of, "In accordance with Nav Air Instruction 3745 TAC 2, we have deemed this a suitable replacement for the part you ordered." Suitable replacement is kind of a good way to describe life in the Marine Corps. With almost every unit you're in, you're always trying to do more with less. It's an everyday fact. And I bring this little story up to start off with for two reasons. Number one, it describes every day in every unit in the Marine Corps I've ever been in except one, and that's the squadron we're here to talk about today. And number two, while your program says that I'm here kind of in replacement for Kathy, I am certainly not a suitable replacement for Kathy by any means. I'm not even going to try and do that. I wish she was here. I know she wishes she was here. What I can do, however, is talk a little bit about Mac, Colonel Reynolds, as I used to call him, our time in a particularly special squadron and flying these aircraft. So we'll get going with that. So in 1947, right after World War II, the Marine Corps stood up a squadron named HMX-1 with the specific job of taking a look at this new technology called a helicopter and seeing where it might be useful, developing the technology. If you've ever seen what the helicopter looked like in 1947, that was probably warranted. They were a ways away from being useful at that point, but step forward another 10 years and they'd made a lot of progress. And the President Eisenhower, Ike, was on vacation in Rhode Island and for whatever reason needed to get back to the White House or back to D.C. very quickly. And unfortunately, to get out of where he was at, he was on an island. He needed to take a ferry before he could take a car, before he could get to Air Force One. So he requisitioned one of the HMX aircraft that happened to be up there, and they flew him across and turned what would have been an hour ferry ride into a 7-minute helicopter ride. And the Marine Corps has been doing this mission ever since. And over time, it's grown to be that helicopter squadron, HMX-1's primary mission. So even though it's got the X in the title for experimental, this is primarily what they do. People ask about me whenever they find out I did this, and I don't usually bring it up, but when they find out I used to do this, they always want to know, what was it like flying with the president, or the vice president? You got any stories? Wasn't it cool? And it was cool. But it's funny, VIP missions in general aren't the kind of thing we wanted to do. I tend to describe them as when a VIP hop came up on the schedule with your name on it, I tend to think of it as like when Coach Calipari gets my alma mater, Eastern Kentucky, on the schedule, and he's looking at it going, well, if I do everything right and I win, no one cares because that's what I'm supposed to do. But if I lose, my head's going to roll. Basically, that's how VIP flying works. So it's not the type of thing we typically volunteered for, but there were reasons why we all love this place. Number one, at least when I was there, HMX-1 had 4 different type model series helicopters. They had what they called the green side, which consisted of CH-46s, now retired. That's what Mac primarily flew when he was in most of his squadron tours. They had the CH-53 Echo, which is what I primarily flew. It's still out there soldiering on. And then on the other side, the white side of the executive flight detachment, they had the VH-3D that you see here. And they also had the VH-60N, which is a vipped out version of the Blackhawk. Every pilot, when they came in the door, was going to be qualified in either the CH-53 or the CH-46, whichever was appropriate. But you did that first, but then over time, since neither of these machines were in the Marine Corps inventory, you had to be trained how to fly the VH-3D and the VH-60. But eventually, you were actually qualified as an aircraft commander in all 3 of the aircraft. And on any given day, you could come in. I was looking at my logbook the other day. I flew mainly VH-60 hops that particular month. Had a few VH-3D hops, but I did get one on a 53. And you never knew what was going to happen. Some days you might get to fly more than one. We even had a couple of days, I logged it twice, where I got what we called the hat trick. I got all 3 of them in one day. So that was very special. There's no other place like that where you can be qualified in that many aircraft at the same time. I think the other unique, this is going to get wet. The other unique thing about working at HMX-1 is the travel. Anywhere the president goes, at least one of these machines is going to go with him, anywhere in the world. So if he's going to five countries in Europe, then coming home and he's going to a couple of places on the West Coast, and then he's going back out the following week to Asia, we are sending detachments with at least 1 aircraft, sometimes more, and multiple Marines everywhere we go. And that's a large logistical, could be a nightmare were it not for one thing. I mentioned most Marine units are trying to do more with less. That is not the case in this place. It's nice after 21 years to have spent at least 4 in a unit that was perfectly funded and watching what Marines can do when you actually give them the money and the equipment to go do it. The best way I can describe when HMX-1 rolls into town is it looks a lot like a well-funded NASCAR team rolling into Kentucky Speedway. Within 2 hours, we take everything out of roll-on, roll-off boxes, and we are completely set up not only to fly this thing, but we have a little mini maintenance department there, we have a little mini communications department there, and we have a security detail. All are ready to go. So that along with the travel that came with it made this place kind of unique. Now Mac and I both did 4-year tours there, which was the standard, mainly because, again, these aren't in the Marine Corps inventory, so you had to spend the first year learning how to fly them. And then Mac actually got the honor, a much more distinct honor, of coming back and flying as the CO, of commanding officer of Marine Helicopter Squadron 1. That's most CO jobs, they're slated on a board. A bunch of people get together and they pick it. Not this one. The head aviator in the Marine Corps, a 3-star general, picks them by name. It's his decision. Then he becomes one of your bosses. And keeping in mind who you're flying, he becomes a very involved boss because anything goes wrong and it trickles down to him pretty quickly. So that was one of Mac's bosses and one of the differences with this job. In addition, this squadron is probably 3 times the size of a typical squadron, maybe 600 people. They had over 30 aircraft between all those type model series. As I just described, they can be spread out all over the world, and you have to manage all that. You're in charge of all those people and the care and feeding of all those Marines. And at the same time, and different than any other colonel job I can think of, you actually fly a lot. He is designated in writing, as Mac was, as the president's pilot. Now, at any time, there are about a handful of guys who are designated that they can fly the president as a pilot in command. But the CO tends to take that job seriously. They probably fly half the flights. What that means is, in addition to managing everything else, he's getting up for a lot of early morning flights. There's a lot of late evening flights because the president will get up in the morning and he'll go somewhere and he can sleep on the plane and he'll come back in the middle of the night and you'll be out there again. You're doing a lot of those, you're doing a lot of trips, and you have to always be on the ball because he's actually doing the flying, and he's flying in 2 different aircraft depending on where he's at, so he's got to keep track of all that. I first flew with Mac, I want to say it was 98. I'd have to go back and look, but basically, when you're the incoming CO, you've been doing a job that wasn't this, so you're not current in at least the 2 white top aircraft, maybe not even the CH-46. But I had been there 2 years at that point. I was an aircraft commander in both of these aircraft, so I did several of the instructional flights with Mac. And it can be a strange dynamic. I think I was a captain at the time, and Mac is a bird colonel, and I'm the instructor, and that is odd, but luckily with him, that was never really a problem. We actually kind of hit it off. Turns out we were both from Kentucky. We were both basketball fans. I don't remember how the heck we got down to this level, but we also both went to basketball camp at Transylvania University 150 years ago, or whenever it was. So we seemed to hit it off, and when time came for me to pin on Major, I asked Mac to do that for me. That involves a ceremony. So my wife joined me, my wife Mary Ann joined me, and we took our daughter, who was, I just calculated, about 6 at the time. And we go up in the office, and when you're a 6-year-old, you really don't have the patience for anything resembling pomp and circumstance of any ceremony. And of course, she started to act up a bit. She was getting into things. And Mac kind of caught an eye. And some of you might remember, if you know Mac, he had a bit of a sweet tooth. There was never a time when he didn't have some sugar on him of some variety. And sure enough, he reaches into his desk in his nice office there, and he pulls out a candy bar, and he slides it over to my daughter. And I can tell you my daughter doesn't remember anything else from that 4-year tour I had, but he remembers that nice man who gave her a candy bar in that office in that hangar. So the second story I'll tell, and it will be the last one, because I'm probably going over already, but Mac and Kathy wanted to have, normally in a squadron you have a lot of events with the officers, your pilots, your officers, but with 70 of them, that was just, you couldn't do it in your house. So what they did is every weekend Mac was actually home, they would have a Saturday night dinner party, and they'd invite a few couples over at a time, and it was our turn in the barrel. So I remember 3 things about this one. One, hopefully we'll get out of here. One, Mac liked wine. Mac knew his wine. Mac liked expensive wine. I had to bring him a bottle, and of course at that point my taste, I knew that Miller Lite tasted better than Old Milwaukee, but beyond that, so I went to the liquor store and I bought him, well, that's about the right price point, I think, and I bought one that had a pretty picture on the front, and I handed over to him that night, and it was only a millisecond, I swear. He didn't do it for long. He recovered quick, but he had a little giggle on his face when I pulled that out of the bag, and I knew right then I'd screwed up. I didn't know exactly how bad, but anyway, the dinner started, thank God. And Kathy, as some of you also probably know, is an excellent cook. I would say borderline chef. So we were really looking forward to the dinner. And the appetizer is a melon wrapped in prosciutto. Interesting. So I turned to my wife and kind of whispered, "What's prosciutto?" And she says, "Fancy ham." I said, "All right, I like ham." So I did have the prosciutto. And somewhere in the middle of that, they had several, this was pre-cell phone, or at least they were the size of bricks at that point. They had at least 2, maybe 3 phones in their house, and the official one rang on a Saturday night. So, all right, what happened? Mac gets up, Colonel Reynolds. I didn't hear anything going on the other end, but I could physically see the color draining out of his face. And the party kind of ended at that point. And I didn't find out, I don't think, till the next day, but I remember I mentioned that one of the original intent of HMX-1, and they were still doing it at this point, is operational test experiment. And we had a detachment that was under Mac's charge as well, in addition to everything else, that was testing out the V-22 Osprey. Had about 8 pilots and some air crew. And that night, one of those Ospreys with 4 air crewmen, including 2 pilots we all knew, and a full load of Marines crashed in Yuma and it killed them all. And unfortunately for Mac, it actually happened again about 6 months later. So twice on his tour, he had to deal with that. And that was a big deal because the Marine Corps really needed the Osprey. Our CH-46s were old. It got a lot of press. He had to deal with all that, in addition to doing all the other things that you have to do when you have a mishap. You got to get a safety team out there immediately. You have to help the family out as best you can, help plan funerals for all these people. And you've got Headquarters Marine Corps breathing down your neck, and you've got the press, and he led through all that. And I'll tell you one other difference between this squadron and any other one. You don't stop. It's a normal squadron, if you have a fatal accident, you're done for a couple of weeks until you've got the funerals done and all that's out of your head so you can put it behind you and fly. In this unit, if the president wanted to fly the next morning, and he may well have, we flew the next morning. And Mac made sure that we had our heads screwed on straight before we did it, so we didn't mess anything up. Mac was a heck of a Marine. He was a heck of a pilot. He was my friend to the extent you can ever be friends with a colonel in the Marine Corps. We lost him too soon. I think we can all agree to that. I wish to God he was here, but I can't think of a better way to commemorate his life and his time in the Marine Corps than this beautiful machine. I want to thank everyone for putting in the thousands of hours it must have taken to put this together. And I want to thank Kathy for giving me the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike. I can't imagine the experiences that you had with Mac during your time together, and we appreciate you sharing with us today. The next person to share a few thoughts with us is known here around town as the main man with the Drug Task Force. But what you may not know is that Tommy Loving is a lifelong friend of Mac Reynolds. In fact, the two of them became buddies back in the let's just say a long, long time ago when Potter Gray Elementary School opened up, and they caused trouble at Potter Gray, caused trouble at Bowling Green High, and I think continued to cause trouble together for years and years after that. Please welcome Mr. Tommy Loving.
You know, and as a side note, something you'll appreciate, back then, Mac's dad, Art, was county school superintendent, but he actually sent Mac to Potter Gray, so we didn't have all that controversy back then, but I digress. Now, Mac and I actually started back in Jolly Time Play School, which some older folks in the crowd like me will remember, and on to Potter Gray, Bowling Green High, and I'm going to cut this a little more brief than I'd planned based on the rain, but I talked to Kathy briefly this morning, and Kathy, being Kathy, said she really hated to put me out to do this, and like I told her, it's an honor. But Potter Gray, Bowling Green High, and Mac and I actually went to First Baptist Church, but one quick story, maybe I'm getting punished right now, but when we were teenagers, we'd sit up in the balcony where our parents couldn't see us and actually slip off the CDS-4 and get some sort of snack and Coke. But we'd always get back in time for the last hymn and not noticed, at least we thought. Mac's mom, Faye, was quite a lady. I was always a little scared of her, but she was a nurse at the old City County Hospital for years. Mac married Kathy in Somerset in '73. Graduating from UK in '74 and going to the Marines, and you've heard a lot of that story. They had two daughters, Christina and Sarah, great girls, and of course his brother John and Susan that were little kids to us growing up, and they hardly are now. And Sarah left us. I'm sorry, Susan left us early, which was, I know, tough on Mac and John and the entire family. Just a couple of other things. Back in 1984, Mac returned to Bowling Green for probably the longest visit he had while he was in the Marines, and that was because President Reagan was coming to town. And he was here, as I can recall, about 10 days. I was still with the state police at that point, and I was liaison to Secret Service for the state police, so we were traveling the same path during a lot of that. Mac was working on potential landing zones and security and concerns the Marines had, and so at least every night we all got together, seems like at the bar at the old Holodome back then, and hashed out the day. But there were some good times at that point. And Mike, you probably remember Fred Geyer. He was a fairly new major at that point down here, and I think he went on to become commander of Marine One's a great guy. But in '97, as Mike said, Mac went to Colonel at HMX-1, and I remember during that time he was there, I had to be in D.C. for a meeting and went down to visit Mac and Kathy, but he told me, come on over to the headquarters first, and I maneuvered my way through Quantico and got over there, and he got me through the gate. And just showing the type of guy like you talk about, Mac, he was giving me the tour, and I guess actually the only time I actually went in one of these helicopters, because if they were here for a official visit, I wasn't going in there, nor was anyone else. It wasn't on the list. But I still remember there were two enlisted guys inside there literally cleaning parts of the helicopter with a toothbrush. Mac knew both those guys by name, called them by name, told them what a good job they were doing. Mac was not only a leader, but a humble guy along the way. Of course, he retired in 2001, went to work for Sikorsky for a couple of years, then finally moved back to be my next door neighbor. And I can tell you, I appreciate what you said about Kathy and those dinners, and she and Mac loved to entertain, and we normally got invited whoever else was coming. So it was great, and that added a few pounds. And Mac was a wine connoisseur and a fine dining connoisseur that you couldn't believe, and I understand the wine story too. But anyway, the other thing I want to touch on just briefly, once Mac got here, he didn't, as many of you know, retire. He served on the BGMU board, nonprofit boards, whatnot, to give back to his community, and he was really good about that. He did love flying. He couldn't give that up. He couldn't give up, helping others. So, I don't know, 3 or 4 years there before he left town, he flew for Air Methods and PHI on their medical helicopters, because he just loved flying these things. But we all miss Mac. It's raining, and February the 2nd, 2018 was a really bad day when Kathy called. I could tell when I got that phone call it wasn't going to be good. But Mac would be proud of this. He would certainly appreciate everything everybody's done here to make this happen, and I can't think of a more deserving guy.
Well, there goes my hairdo for today. I have to get my Tommy, thank you. So many of those stories that we know, and Mike, thank you for sharing with us. It was a little misty, but more misty-eyed there at the end. What a great person. Well, what a great day it is for us here at Aviation Heritage Park. Literally thousands of hours from Tanker and AB and all the help that put this beautiful machine together. We all have something to be proud of here in Bowling Green and Warren County. As chairman of our Convention Visitors Bureau, I can tell you this is becoming one of our best and best known tourism attractions to Bowling Green. And that is because of veterans and service people who these aircraft and these stories touch many, many people. So what we do here, as we mentioned earlier, our mission is to recognize, find heroes and aviation pioneers, and recognize them, not just by the aircraft here, but to tell their stories. And there's a whole list of those that we've compiled through our resident historian, Ray Buckberry. Thank you, Ray, for all the work that you do. But you will be amazed. Like many of you have been amazed about the stories that you never heard of. I've lived here all my life. I've never heard of many of these stories. We all knew General Cherry was flight leader of the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds. How many knew he had 300 plus combat missions in Vietnam and got a MiG kill? So that's the kind of things that we do. That's why we do what we do, and it's to educate, to inspire youth. You never know what's going to inspire some young person when they touch that aircraft and learn that. Over 107 astronauts flew NASA 901 over there, that very aircraft. Every man that walked in the face of the moon has logged time in that very aircraft. So these are the stories, and this is what we do. We got a lot more to tell, but we need your help. First and foremost, thanks to all of our supporters for all our financial help. We don't get any financial help from city, county, state, or federal government. It's all you. It's all about what our network of people in our culture do in our AHP family. The Hangar Museum is going to be spectacular. It's almost ready to come out of the ground, and we need your help for that. There's a donate button for you that are watching through our virtual streaming media today. Please click on that button and donate, and tell your friends, and come see us more than anything. Thank you for being here for this very historical day. And there's a very important part of our program that, because of the rain, it's fogged up my glasses and I couldn't see my program. But underneath, I'm sure everybody now is wondering what this surprise is. So let's do the unveiling. We're going to have Tommy and Mike come up and unveil the reader panel for Marine One. Well done, gentlemen. Thank you for being here to do that for us. Please come back, Mike, and we keep Tommy here all the time, so he'll be out here for lunch. Thank each and every one of you. Please help us. Don't forget that donate button on the screen.
As far as Aviation Heritage Park, it's an opportunity not only for older people and prior military people to go out and look at the things that they were associated with on active duty, but it gives a younger generation a challenge to want to do the same thing.
Well, when somebody can read these stories and realize the worldwide impact that Bowling Green and our surrounding communities have had, particularly in aviation, it expands their ideas. It expands our reach. Our people have gone to many places and have had great influence on many things. And we want them to understand not only have we had influence all over the place, but our culture, way of life, the way we do things right, the way we treat people has been seen by people all over the world.
It's about local people. It's telling the story of people, individuals who either grew up right here in Bowling Green, Warren County, or in one of the surrounding counties of South Central Kentucky. They perhaps also had some association with Western Kentucky University. Many of them, in turn, lived and worked right here in this community.
Our community has been fantastic, nothing short of fantastic, in their support of Aviation Heritage Park.
There have been many individuals here in Bowling Green who have agreed that this is something that's important for our community. It's important for our youth to see that a lot of these individuals who are honored out there they're walking in, they're going to the same schools that these individuals, and where they attended school.
We're a nonprofit organization, but the other side of that means that we have no financial help from anybody else. So we get no money from the county or the city or the state or the federal government. It all comes out of donations in our pocket.
It's what we go out and generate by helping people understand the importance of what we're doing.
And it's an ongoing thing. It's not just a one-time, we have some expenses. It's an ongoing thing because every one of those aircraft require attention. The park itself requires attention because when someone comes and they are new to the area, or someone comes and they're just new to the park, the first thing they tell us is, we didn't know that this was here. And now that we do, we're going to tell all of our friends.
But we've had a lot of comments, even from the parent organizations like the Air Force Museum in Wright Pat in Dayton, Ohio, and Pensacola, that we take particularly good care of our artifacts, and we do.
And our newest initiative is to have a permanent structure, indoor facility with a museum there at the park, because there's so much more to these stories than what we can show with a single aircraft outside in a rear board.
We're just ready to come out of the ground with it, but obviously you need funding to make that happen.
There are so many individuals who have never served on the board, but who have either volunteered or who have made significant donations, monetary donations, to make Aviation Heritage Park what it is today. While a lot of times you don't hear those names, you don't always see those faces, I think it's important for us to always recognize and understand that it's a lot of individuals who are behind the scenes. Many of those individuals, they know who they are, and to them I say thank you.